Hello and welcome to another edition of Buckeye Banter. We're telling the story of people who played for or worked around Ohio State athletics. And hey, March Madness is right here. And I'm going to come with one of the guys, especially in my lifetime, who was part of some great memories for me. Jason Singleton, member of the 1999. Yes, he was on a Final Four team. Jason, thanks so much for taking some time.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, hey, you arrived at Ohio State in 1995 behind Randy Ayers. He recruited you. You're out of Southgate Aquinas High School. Is that right, in Michigan?
Yes, it's a suburb of Detroit.
How did Randy get you out of that state up north?
Ooh, man, it's I guess I'd say it's kind of a long story. I was recruited by most of the schools around the country, and initially Ohio State wasn't on my list, and I went to Aquinas High School. We won a state championship my sophomore year. We went 28-0, and that kind of, I think, a lot of schools were looking at me from there. Obviously Michigan State, and I think Randy Ayers, him and his staff just took a liking to me, and they did a really good job recruiting me coming to my high school. And they went to visit my mother. She was a principal in Detroit Public Schools. They go visit her at her school, and they were always just really professional. And my mom, she raised me by herself, and she just thought that going to Ohio State, playing for Randy Ayers, he would be a great role model for me, and or just a good person to help me mature and grow into a young man.
When it's amazing. I mean, a lot of things had been happening around the program at that point, but you come in with an 8-person class. It was a huge class. I mean, you and Nashawn Coleman and Damon Stringer, Jermaine Tate, Sean Stonerook, Jamie Bosley. Those are some of the guys. I, I guess tell me a little bit about coming in with so many guys and kind of in 1995 as you arrive on campus. Are you? I assume you guys are very hopeful. I know as a younger fan at the time, I was hopeful that that would kind of turn things around.
Yeah, Randy Ayers kind of sold us on a new beginning. He showed us the plans for the Schottenstein Center being built, and we knew that they were putting a lot of emphasis on the basketball team and trying to change things. Coming from Detroit, I was able to see the Fab Five. So in our minds and in my mind, I also thought that, hey, we could be a next Fab Five. But we had 8 freshmen coming in, which was unheard of at that time. And knowing all the talent that was coming in, I thought that each guy could play and we could be pretty special.
Yeah, and obviously, as most people know, it didn't quite turn out the way you wanted. But I guess tell me a little bit about that first season. You arrive on campus, and I mean, you did get your share of playing time as a young guy. There are very few veterans on that team. I think Rick Ute was still there, and but what was it like there as a freshman playing on that team?
It was tough. I think all freshmen is tough your freshman year, and you have to find that adjustment. Uh, I was a small, skinny guy, and I always joke and say, my first day coming to Ohio State, I'm out on the court, and Ricky Dudley steps out of the locker room, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is huge. I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready for college basketball, but Ricky Dudley, played football and basketball at Ohio State and went on and played football in the NFL. But he was massive and just a big guy. So just physically trying to be prepared, is tough in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is always a strong conference, and it has been traditionally a more physical conference. It was also a tough adjustment with 8 freshmen. 6 out of the 8 were from Ohio. So being from the state up north, it was a tough for me to I just felt like I was always you know treated differently. And I think the coaches were being tough on me because they knew what I had in me, and they were trying to pull out the best in me. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but as I grew, I understood what they were trying to pull out of me and what they were trying to get out of me by being tougher on me.
Yeah, and certainly the old adage, a coach is going to yell at a guy he thinks still has something inside. Like if they thought you weren't up to the task, they would just kind of move on to the next guy, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I was actually a senior in high school in the 96-97 season. And I remember coming to a game in like early January. I had actually just gotten my acceptance letter to come to Ohio State as a student. I remember my dad bringing me up and we went to a game, and I just remember that was like a interesting turning point because in that season, 96-97, it felt like at that time as a sophomore for you, there was a little bit in that team, and then things just didn't go your way. And that became a long season as well. Um, what about year two? I guess if you could encapsulate what it was like for you then, because you're kind of more established now, but it still ended up being a disappointing season, and Coach Ayers ends up being fired.
Yeah, the crazy thing is we always had the talent.
Mm.
We just couldn't put it together, and we couldn't just quite get over the hump. I attribute a lot of it to we had so many young guys, and we didn't have enough leadership, and we didn't have older guys who had been there for 4 years that could get us kind of on track. It was almost kind of like the inmates were running the ship. We just had too many young guys and too many bad decisions and just not enough maturity. We were just waiting for someone to be a leader, take the lead, and kind of get us over the hump.
Yeah, I remember there were times when you thought, here in Ohio, we knew Damon Stringer. I watched him play in state championship games and things like that at St. John Arena, and he was there. And then Jermaine Tate. I mean, I was reading up on this in preparation for this interview, and the only knock against Jermaine Tate when he came in was he's so thin that to your point earlier, going up against Big Ten big men was going to be tough for him. But he was a great talent. And then even Sean Stonerook, could pull down rebounds like crazy from nearby Westerville North. So yeah, it was always like kind of like, oh, it's here, it's here, it's here. But Coach Ayers didn't get the chance to finish that out. What was kind of that like for you as a player? And did you have a decision to make? Because it wasn't a transfer portal era where you could just walk over to another school and play right away. But I'm sure when he lost his job, did you evaluate that at all? Did you think about what your next move might be?
Uh, I did. I think each year, it kind of crossed my mind, but my family was deeply rooted in education and really knew the importance of getting a degree from Ohio State. I was, my mom, she's an educator and grew up in Detroit. She just valued education, and I didn't want to chase basketball and go to a different school every year just for the sake of basketball. You know, my goal was to win and be successful in basketball, but I also knew that basketball ends and there's life after basketball. And having a degree from Ohio State, living in Columbus, I would be set for forever.
Actually, I want to divert a little bit then. The point you just rose, I've had that conversation with friends of mine when we talk about the transfer portal and things like that. And it's very unique. Columbus is a big city. Not every big college is in a big city like metropolitan area like Columbus. But you don't have to look too far. You yourself, you look around Columbus, you see former Ohio State football and basketball players doing well in business, doing well in their community, giving back to their community while also kind of being embraced. I would say, like, if you're if you're a 3 or 4 year player at Ohio State, you can come back and live here, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. Everything that you learn in sports, those are all transferable skills to your professional life. And, I was always a blue collar guy, I worked really hard, and I just take those same principles and apply them to my professional world. Ohio State has changed so much since I was in college. I mean, it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. So many people come to Ohio State for school and they stay here. I mean, it's a great place to live. The cost of living is so much lower than in many places. The school systems are great. The city is great. I mean, it's just a wonderful place to live. And once people come here, they don't want to leave. And if you're a Buckeye, it makes it that much more special.
It does, and we'll get to that in a moment. You worked for Ohio State for several years, and you're still here in Columbus. So obviously you're a testament to that. Tell me a little bit about the hiring of Jim O'Brien. I was on campus that summer as I was going to be a freshman, and I remember I worked on campus actually in an office, so I got here early, and I remember just some of the stories about, Jim O'Brien was coming in and he was not going to suffer any fools, right? He was going to make sure you guys were doing what was right. A few guys ended up leaving the program that summer. What was it like for you, and kind of was it hard for you to kind of adjust to the new coach?
Uh, you know, it was we didn't really know what to expect. Scooney Penn had also transferred over. So when Scooney came in, he was able to kind of talk to us and tell us, what the new coaches were like. So that kind of eased a lot of people's nerves. But Coach Ayers and Jim O'Brien were just drastically different. And Jim O'Brien, when he came in, I remember, I think we were sitting in the locker room, watching TV and just in the little lounge area. And Coach O'Brien just came and sat right in the middle of us and just started watching TV with us. And, we were all shocked, like, okay, what are you doing? But he felt comfortable. He was engaged, and he was really just interested in what we were into, and he just seemed like he really cared about us. And he was also a genius when it came to basketball, running plays, and I think for me personally, I like to be stimulated mentally, and he was able to really show me X and O's basketball, and I just wanted more. I was like a sponge, and a majority of our team was that way, and I just felt like we just kept getting better and better on the court and off the court, which helped us with our run.
You mentioned when you came, you were a bit of an outsider. You weren't from Ohio. I remember that being a big deal when they hired Coach O'Brien from Boston College, and certainly he had the accent that was quite a bit different, right? And Scooney brought that as well. That was entertaining to hear Scooney talk and tell stories and things like that. But what was that like to have an outsider come in, and then I guess him sitting down with you, maybe stuff like that makes you want to play for him and prove that he belongs and things like that. I don't know. Did that ever go through your mind at all, or how he was coming in from the outside?
Yeah, it was definitely an East Coast invasion. They the whole coaching staff was from the East Coast.
Yeah, Rick Boyages, Paul Biancardi, yeah, those guys.
And listening to them talk, it sounded like another language almost. Then you had Scooney coming in. He's from Boston. Also, you had Brian Brown from New York, Will Dudley from New York. You had all these New Yorkers and East Coast, and it literally was just like you was hearing another language in the locker room. But it was all good, genuine people, and everyone just had the same common goal where we wanted to turn things around and we wanted to win right now. It wasn't we're going to wait 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We knew we had the talent. We just wanted to try to do whatever we could to win. I want to do whatever I could to leave a legacy behind as well.
Yeah. Now this is your junior year you're going into at that point, and I remember even I went to get my student tickets, right? And I'm in the St. John Arena, and you guys are practicing, and you can hear Coach O'Brien just yelling at Ken Johnson and all sorts of things. I'm sure you could tell me stories about those practices, but I guess because Scooney had to sit out, though, the legend was that Scooney was grabbing a hold of four other guys and playing against you guys in practice. What what was that like? And obviously he was a leader, but he couldn't step on the floor and play. Again, not transfer portal. You had to sit out a year. Or
So
he did.
at that time, we had Scooney, who had to sit out a year. We still had Damon Stringer, who had a stress fracture in his back. So we literally did not have a point guard for
Exactly.
that whole year. Um, I think with one of the things I always liked about the coaches is our practices were really tough, and he a lot of times he would mix it up, and we would have just they would have Damon Stringer and Scooney on the same team, and you know, it would just be battles. And I think we knew that we were good, but we just didn't have a point guard, and that was another losing season. It was tough the whole year. Uh, that's when we had Mike Red also, and Mike did a great job. He came out and he was able to 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 blossom and grow, but we were just missing a point guard.
Mm.
And the following year, once Scooney was able to play, once we had a point guard, it was a wrap. We
So
were
different. Yeah.
ready to go.
Well, listen, so you go 8-22 that year. It's the last year at St. John Arena. Michael Redd scored 22 a game as a freshman. He stuck with his commitment to Ohio State from West High School here in town. You end up playing Kansas. Kenny Gregory was from in town too, and he was a freshman at Kansas. I remember you played like at midnight Eastern. I had to stay up and watch you guys, and I just remember barely staying awake. And you're in that game, and you think about the fact that you mentioned the point guard. God bless Carlos Davis, right? I mean, he did what he could. And I remember, games against teams like Michigan, who were just loaded still back then, and Michigan State, as Tom Izzo was starting to bring his guys up and along. And my college roommate still is mad at me because I'm a big Reds fan. And one time I went to a Reds game and they were down like 11-3, and my stepdad made me leave, and then they came back and won. So like I wouldn't leave your games. Like you lost by 30 points to one or two of these teams, Jason, and I wouldn't leave. And my roommate was like, "We've got to get back to the dorm. Let's go." And I'm like, "No, we're not leaving." But it was tough, wasn't it? It was just that was a tough go that year, 8-22.
Yeah, it was tough, but I think the coaches and the players knew that we had the talent, and we had the pieces. We just literally we did not have a point guard. Carlos Davis, he was a two. He was more of a shooting guard, and they moved him over to the point. I think he was serviceable and did a good job through the year, but he played out of position, and we knew what we had in practice, and it was just tough going through a whole year with having both your point guards out.
But hey, just on a side note, when you're not an athlete and you come to Ohio State, it's such a big school, right, and all that, and sometimes you see athletes walking around campus. You were my first guy because I was on South Campus and I'd be coming to or from class, and you would walk past me in your Detroit Tigers hat, and you wore that about every day, which was pretty cool, I thought. But I remember seeing you on campus and things like that. That was a big deal to me.
Wow, I can't believe. Yeah, I stayed on a North Campus in Haverfield, and it was most of the guys stayed in the towers back then. That was like the athletic
Mm-hmm.
dorm for the football players, the basketball players. But me and Jermaine Tate, we both stayed together in on North Campus, and yeah, I'm still a Detroiter forever, and I still represent the Tigers, the Pistons, Red Wings, Lions. So as much as I'm a Buckeye, I'm still a Detroiter at heart.
In my neighborhood, actually, Ryan Perryman from up by Detroit, he
He's a
lives
good
here.
player.
He played at Dayton, and he was about your height. He led the nation in rebounding around that time. And but he rocks the Detroit, but also the Michigan stuff all the time. It's a little gross.
Yeah, I know Ryan real well. We played against each other in high school. He was a good player.
Okay.
He was really good. He's I think maybe a year or two older,
Mhm.
but had a good career at Dayton, good career overseas, and I'm happy he's here in Columbus. Hopefully his kids and family
Watch
will
out
come
for
over.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good. Very good here in Gahanna schools. All right, so you get to your last year. Well, tell me a little bit about closing out St. John Arena. Did that mean anything to you as a player? But then also, it gets a reputation now as not being the best atmosphere. But when the Schottenstein Center opened, it was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, St. John's was unbelievable. I think St. John's, the atmosphere was great. Fans were on top of you. The stands went straight up, so
Hmm.
it just felt like they were closer. It was more intimate. The acoustics in there it got really loud, and it was great. I think the exciting part about St. John's for players was the locker room. The locker room was just so nice when you compare it to St. John's locker room. Going into the shot, we were excited. The practice gym, the practice facility at that time, it was probably the best arena in the country. And
Hmm.
having a practice gym, it seemed as though it was very similar to the United Center in Chicago. Um, and then just going into the shot, I think there was so much excitement around the new arena, and then our team was starting to get a little buzz, starting to win. It seems as though we were selling the shot out for the most of our Big Ten games, and it was really exciting. They had lots of graphics and things throughout the arena and the locker room. So of course, the glitz and glamour of the shot was great, and it's still a beautiful place to play. But I played 3 years in St. John's, and have lots of great memories in St. John's. When I go to the skull sessions for football, it gives me chills being in there and hearing the fans cheer and go crazy.
Well, one of the negatives for me, that was my sophomore year, your senior year. One of the negatives for me was they put student radio up in the hockey press box, and so I'm looking down at you guys like with binoculars. Like it was an interesting situation to call a game from that high up.
Yeah, I think they were still trying to figure everything out. They made a lot of mistakes, and hopefully they're able to fix things by now.
Well, and one of the problems too was you'd come off 2 pretty rough seasons, and I know the students didn't quite clamor to get the tickets.
Yeah.
And so that first year with students was a little rough. And you're right. I mean, as you guys played through that year, you go from 8-22 to 27-9. All right. So I want to take you through that season a little bit, but that was one of those deals where, you open up a new basketball arena. It's not quite the same as like the romanticism around a baseball ballpark, right? It's an indoor basketball arena is a little different. And I think it just took a little while, but you're right. The way you guys played, people just started flocking. I mean, from start to finish, that was pretty amazing to see. Like all of a sudden people were caring again, right, about Ohio State basketball.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when you're watching oh man, with the Cleveland Indians movie, Wild
Oh yeah,
Things?
Major League, yeah.
Yeah, Major League, and people in the stands were saying, "Hey, these guys they aren't that bad,"
That's
So
right. I mean, even if you didn't go to the Final Four, which we're going to get to in a minute, that season was such a good turnaround. And I guess when did you know? Because I'm going to take you through a few points in that season where it's like, I don't know, maybe they don't, maybe they are, maybe they're not. When did you guys as players? Was it just because you're getting Scooney and now you feel like it was like that last piece, like for Tetris, to lock that in and be what you needed?
Well, for me, I think I was a senior, and I had 3 losing seasons, and I felt as though I'm gonna play so hard. There's no way that we're not gonna go to a postseason.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're gonna go to the NIT. We're gonna go somewhere. We are gonna be playing, and a- again, we knew that we had the talent, and I knew that we would make the tournament, or we would at least make NIT. And I had no idea we'd go to the Final Four, but talent wise, we knew that we had a really special team, and I realized that the coaches were just brilliant. And Coach O'Brien, I feel like throughout the season, he probably won 5 or 6 games just from out coaching the other coach. I
Yeah.
mean, we had all the pieces. We had the talent. We had athleticism. We had shooters. We had defenders. I mean, Ken Johnson. I knew if I got beat, Ken was just going to block somebody's shot. I mean, we literally had it all, and I was just waiting for us to figure out, okay, when is this going to click? And I think the Big Ten, there was a lot of teams that were ranked that year. The Big Ten was strong, and we were beating a lot of those teams at home, and we were beating them on the road. And I think we knew, okay, if we can beat these teams in the Big Ten, we can play with anyone. And then also we went to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, you won that tournament. That's the Puerto Rico Holiday Classic, it was called.
Yeah.
And you beat Ole Miss, a couple other teams, but you win that tournament. That was kind of big. Listen, it's just you and Nashawn Coleman at this point from that big recruiting class. That's all that's left. And as a senior, and I know Nashawn was dealing maybe with a knee or something like that, but you go up to Toledo, a homecoming for him, close to where you grew up. You lose a tough one by a point, and even at that point, I remember that was like, I think that was like the football, like league championship game weekend, and I still remember that Toledo loss being kind of like a lot of people didn't recognize, they like didn't know it happened, maybe because it was right around finals, and we, a lot of the students didn't really know that much about it. But you lose that game, but you turn around and you win the Holiday Classic. I guess early in the season, I'm a diehard, so I'm going to be there no matter what. But early in the season, it's almost like you were waiting for something to click, weren't you?
Yeah, I think again, our leadership, what we were lacking my freshman year, we had my senior year. It was between myself and Scooney and Nishan Coleman. We had leaders who really wanted to win, and we were all selfless. I realized, okay, I may have to play a role in order for us to be successful. And going to Puerto Rico, we play against SEC teams, we play against ACC teams, and we realize we can play with anyone and we can beat anyone. I think that tournament, playing there, winning that, gave us a lot of confidence leaving there, and I think we knew this team can be special, and I think the coaches realized that too. The coaches had a lot of confidence in us.
Yeah, I think there were times where you maybe take two steps forward and then maybe a step back with a few of these games. I know the Toledo loss, there was a Miami loss right after Puerto Rico, but for me the big one was, it's a home game against Indiana. All right, it's early January. You'd lost to them 3 times the previous year, and you came close to beating them at least one or two of those times. It was kind of like, oh man, you're right there. Bob Knight, obviously larger than life, coming into Columbus, where he played. You beat them 73-56 that night. And to me, and to a lot of probably other folks, that was when people's eyes started opening to, oh, wait a minute, this is a little different. I remember actually after the game, Bob Knight came stumbling into the press conference, and he was just all angry and everything. And he said an opening comment, and they said, all right, any questions? And you've got Indiana people, you've got Ohio State people. Nobody asked him a question. I'm 19 years old. I'm a student reporter. I just asked him a question about if he's surprised at how good Ohio State's guards play. And he bit my head off, of course, because that's what he did. But it was just amazing to me. Like that was like, okay, that was a validating point. And I don't know if you remember it that way too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our guards, they were strong. A lot of people forget about John Sanderson. John Sanderson was a really really good player, and then you had Brian Brown. Um, y- y- Again, that year, everybody contributed in so many different ways. Even the scout team, but we were prepared for every game. Now we have some confidence, and winning against Indiana at home, it showed everybody, okay, we can beat anyone you put in front of us. And we were also having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
It was just lots of fun. We really enjoyed each other. George Reese,
Yeah.
Scooney, like they are funny guys, and to come to practice every day, we had a lot of fun, and we pushed each other, and it was I really miss those days.
You beat top 15, top 16 teams. You beat Purdue 72-43. You beat a really highly ranked Minnesota team 89-60. And that one, you probably remember. I mean, I think it was the year before, you'd played up there at the barn in Minnesota, and they just kind of beat you, took you apart a little bit. I don't know. Do you get like kind of some redemption out of getting some of those wins as a senior now? You're kind of beating these teams that have been beating up on you.
Oh yeah, I mean, as a freshman coming in the Big Ten, the guys were so big and so strong. I remember, I think Courtney James for Minnesota, and I forget Clark. Those two guys were huge and just strong guys. As a freshman, I think I got to come in and guard Brian Evans. I think it's Brian Evans for Indiana.
Hmm.
All he did was run off of picks and screens. And so you got 7-footers, 6'10" guys setting screens the whole game. That was as a freshman, very very difficult to be able to physically keep up, and then mentally. I mean, a lot of plays, lots of um, uh, lots of different things that teams tend to do. Early on, I wasn't watching film the same way I watched film as a junior and senior. And as a senior, we watched so much film that helped me play better defense. It helped me become a better person, being able to understand, watch film, and look at tendencies.
Now you mentioned a little bit earlier, but I'm gonna give you a lot of credit here. Like your points, your shots, some of your stats went down your senior year, but the effort you're putting in and the contribution. I remember Ken must have been in foul trouble, but the Northwestern game at home, you end up having to guard a 7-footer Evan Eschmeyer for most of the night, and you're giving up 6 inches probably, right? I mean, you did that, and I also recall, Fox Sports kind of was they was trying to compete with Sports Center and ESPN and all that, and they would have on the crawl, they would have stats, and it was kind of new to see that on TV at the time, and they would have like points per game leaders, all these different things. But then they would do men's college basketball um, field goal percentage leaders. And every week I'm seeing your name on there, tops in the country. And I asked Dan Wallenberg one time, he was your sports information director. I said, why don't the game notes say this? When Fox Sports is reporting he's the best in the country. And he said, well, it's because he hasn't taken enough shots per game. Like there was like a minimum, but at the same time, you're shooting like 64% from the field. It was really, I think your contributions were great. Do you remember the Eschmeyer game? Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do. That was Kenny Johnson. He did get in foul trouble, and I had to, between me and George Reese, we had to go out there and kind of hold everything down for Ken. And I think I was kind of like a little fly around the elephant's ear. I just kept on, bugging them, nagging them, kept moving. Just my athleticism just kind of frustrated him, I think. And one-on-one, my defense is pretty good. But again, a lot of it is watching film, being prepared, understanding his tendencies, and just leaving it all out there on the court. I- my senior year, I did lead the Big Ten in the country in field goal percentage, and again, I just kind of played my part. You know, it was everyone had their role, and I had to buy in to my role, and I just wanted to do whatever it took to win. If it meant taking less shots, or if it meant setting a screen here or there, I just wanted to do whatever it took to win. And luckily, it wasn't just me; it was other guys that were selfless, and we all were on the same page. And again, we had a lot of fun, and it was awesome.
All right, let's go through the tournament run. If I remember correctly, Scooney Penn had kind of injured his tailbone or something like that in the last regular season game at Penn State. And then you were beaten in the second round by an upstart Illinois team in the Big Ten tournament. And now you're seeded fourth. You're going to Indianapolis. I actually had to miss the first game. The Murray State game was on a Thursday night. I had a final, and I couldn't get over there and back. So you beat Murray State. I did watch on TV. I'm like, come on, you guys got to win so I can come, Saturday. You beat them, and then Detroit Mercy, which I don't know if you knew any of the guys on that team, they upset UCLA, and so you play them in the second round, and you beat them 75-44. Tell me a little bit about going to Indianapolis, getting your first taste of postseason play.
I think we were happy that we were going to Indianapolis because it was so close.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that we knew that we could beat anyone. We also knew that we could lose to anyone, with March Madness. But going to Indianapolis was great because we knew our fans would be there, and we knew our fans could get over there easily, and we would have a good turnout, which we did. Murray State was a good team. Detroit was a really good team. I think Detroit had Rashad Phillips, and they had Jermaine Jackson. They had some guys that ended up playing in the NBA. Jalen Rose was there watching the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to make sure that we weren't upset, and that we would just come in there, play well. They had good guards, but I think we matched up well with them as well because we had guards and we were so athletic. But I think one of the biggest things we were happy about was just being close to Columbus, being right down the road in Indianapolis, so our fans could be there.
Well, you did. You got it done, and there were a good amount of fans there. Although playing in that dome, it was obviously very cavernous and very big. Now you're off to Knoxville for the Sweet 16. You're going against Auburn. They were not a traditional power by any means, but with Chris Porter and their coach Cliff Ellis and Charles Barkley was in attendance. Like that was like a moment for me. I didn't get to call the play-by-play, but I had a media pass, and so they would put you in the like first row around the arena, like there was an overflow for media. And I remember looking back, and I'm like, Charles Barkley's behind me. Like I got a better seat than Charles Barkley. That was pretty cool. They were favored, but you still beat the Tigers 72-64, and you stay alive. At this point, it's starting to really like momentum is growing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. The momentum is growing. We're making a run, and we thought that we matched up really well with Auburn. They had Chris Porter. I knew that I would have the Chris Porter assignment, and I felt as though that I would be able to contain him. They had another guard. I feel like the guard situation between Brian Brown and Scooney, we would be able to contain the guard. So I just felt like our matchups were just really, really good. And again, having Ken Johnson back there, who's leading the country in shot blocking at the time, was always a safety net for us. And we knew we can get out and play hard on defense and really harass guys. And um, again, we knew what we had, and that was just such a amazing game for us because Auburn was picked to win. We were, it felt as though we were down south, which we were. We were worried that they would have so many more fans than us. I think we had a good showing. I think the game might have been on Thursday or Friday night. So I feel like a lot of our Buckeye fans was waiting to see if we were going to win. And once we did, they jumped on the road on the highway and came down for the next game against St. John's because the whole arena was filled with Buckeye fans.
Yeah, for reasons I won't get into, we went to the game Thursday night. Then we stayed overnight, but we had to come back to Columbus, the group I was with, and then we came back on Saturday. And yes, there were many Ohio State fans. You mentioned Brian Brown. Let's rewind just a moment. Coach O'Brien made that change. John Sanderson had started basically at the wing all year. Michael Redd and Scooney were I guess your 1 and 2 guards. But for the tournament run, Brian Brown, the freshman, was inserted in the starting lineup. Do you recall? Did he give a reason? It just kind of changed what had been happening all year? And Brian obviously earned it and played really well.
Yeah, the coach didn't make an announcement, or he didn't give a reason or anything. I think they just saw that they preferred to have that three guard lineup with um, Scooney, Mike, and Brian. I think it took a little pressure off of Scooney. Also, Brian Brown brought the ball up, half the time. Is actually funny. I was watching the game with Scooney, and I was asking him. Sometimes it seemed as though 50-50 Brian Brown would bring the ball up. And I would ask him, like, how did you guys figure out who's going to bring the ball up? And then he said that they knew what plays they were going to run. And some plays were for with the Mike, some was for Scooney. And depending on the play, Brian Brown would bring the ball up. And I think it just helped free up Scooney to get some more shots off and to get it's difficult being a point guard and having to bring the ball up and then shoot the ball and score. So having Brian Brown and having two guys on the wing that can score, really helped us be balanced and a more of a balanced attack on offense.
Well, to your
And
point,
Brian Brown's defense was really, really strong too.
yeah, he was. I think by the time he was done at Ohio State, he was an all Big Ten defensive player. To your point too, I think in the next game, the Elite Eight against a St. John's team that was really good. You win that game. It's a tense game. You win 77-74. Scooney, I think, had 26 points in that game. So he was one of the best scoring point guards in the country, and maybe one of the best in Ohio State history. And you're right. I think pulling him off the ball sometimes probably freed him up more. So that's definitely what you needed. What do you remember about that St. John's game and some foul trouble in that game as well?
Yeah, I just remember that they again it was for some reason we always matched up well, with teams. That they had Eric Barkley and they had Ron Artest, Postel. They had a lot of talent. They had a lot of scores, but in every position, I think we had someone that can match up with those guys. And I think they were having a great season also, and thinking that they would go really deep in the tournament, and not really knowing who we are, not really knowing that Ohio State has good basketball. I think they were not ready for what we had.
I think they'd beaten a good Maryland team to get there as well. And yeah, did you end up guarding our test a lot that night? I don't
Yeah,
recall. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
and boy, talk about seeing him in person, even then, because he went on to be a good NBA player, really good. I was just struck by how like thick he was. Like he was so strong, especially in his legs. He was just such a strong player. But obviously, you guys were able to hold it back and win that game.
yeah. I mean, between Chris Porter and Ron Artest, I feel like every game I'm facing an NBA player, and all these guys from Evan Eschmeyer. I mean, the Big Ten definitely prepared us for the run that we were going to make.
Now, from where you guys had come from, two really rough seasons to now. And I mean, even us as guys, one of the reasons we drove back to Columbus was because we weren't making plans, right? Like we just didn't know when it was going to end. Not that we didn't have faith in you guys, but it was more like, well, we've not been here, right? Like it had been since 1992 since Ohio State had made the tournament, and all of a sudden the game ends, you beat St. John's, and it was just like I could just describe it as euphoria. Like you cut the nets down, there's interviews all over the court. I actually ended up helping Channel 10 because it's not digital. So they literally are still using tapes. And they're like, Seth, run out to the truck and deliver the tape to the producer so they can load up the next interview. And the anchor was out there, doing a live shot. And I'm running back and forth, back and forth. And every time I come back, you guys are still just dancing and having fun. Like, what do you remember about the post game?
uh, like you said, having fun. I remember just seeing my family in the stands, and just it was just a sea of red, literally in the stands and in the crowd. And I was so humbled and just happy that we were able to win for our fans, and to bring some excitement to Ohio State, and bring excitement to the basketball program. We always have fun. We always Our team was just a really jovial, loose team. And before all the games, we were always dancing. And every game, Scooney would bring his big boom box. It was just a big radio. He would bring his radio, and we would play Detroit music, and we would dance in the locker rooms before each game. So then after we won against St. John's, we were dancing on the court, and just bringing some of that locker room spirit out to our fans.
Now, I remember the following week, you're back in Columbus. Everybody's getting ready to depart to go to the Final Four in St. Petersburg, Florida. And something people might not think about much today because NIL and all the things. I remember like Brian Brown and a couple of the other guys being excited because you're on spring break. So the rules allowed them to give you a little more per diem or a little more money. Like that was a big deal, especially to like Brian Brown, who was a freshman, and Will Dudley.
Yeah, the per diem, back then was always exciting for us, depending on where you went, what city you were in, how long you were gone, would be a factor in how much money we would get. So uh, I do remember that, especially going to Florida, not knowing how long we're going to be there. It was, I think we got a nice little amount of per diem.
Yeah, the guys were excited, especially like I said, the freshmen. Now it was wild. We get down there. I've got two friends who had bought student tickets through Ohio State, and they were about the 20th row off the free throw line. Good seats for a big dome, right? And we go pick up the tickets. I pick up my media credential, and there's a guy outside with a stack of cash, like you wouldn't believe. And he offers my roommate and our other friend Sarah. He offers them like 2,500 a piece for these tickets. And we're like, what? And Randy, my roommate, he's like, that's a quarter's worth of tuition at the time. And he's like, we'll go down to the sports bar down the street and watch the game there, Sarah. Let's sell these tickets. And she's like, no, I'm not doing it. I came here to watch the Buckeyes. I'm not doing it. And he looks at me. He's like, well, where's your ticket? And I said, well, I got this press pass. And I think it might have my picture on it even. Like it's pretty official. And the guy's like, well, you could get like $10,000 for that. And I was like, yeah, and I'll never be allowed to cover a game again because they'd be like, some other guy took my press pass, right? So that's what it was like. This guy had to, they'd already sold tickets and he had to come try to get them. It was pandemonium down there. It was a weird night. It was, Scooney Pinn, right, had to play without his jersey. His number 12 wasn't. Do you recall what happened there?
Yeah, they couldn't find his jersey, and it's still like a mystery today of what happened to that jersey. And I think that kind of threw a little bit of threw us off a little bit, and definitely threw him off wearing I think he wore 35, maybe.
35, I think,
Yeah,
which not made famous yet by Kevin Durant. So nobody wanted to wear 35.
yeah. Nobody want to wear 35, like so.
And it didn't have his name on it, obviously, things like that. You lose to a very good UConn team. That's the first of their many now national championships. They had a good team. Rip Hamilton, Clete Elamine. I guess the game itself, well, I think it was a 6-point loss. What was it like in the game? And did it feel like it just kind of, I don't know if you guys never got your feet under you or what. It just always felt like the whole game, like you were playing a little bit of catch up.
Yeah, I kind of compare it to you look at like Duke, and they're just used to winning, and they when they win, it's like, okay, this is kind of what we do. I think when we won, I think the celebrating, and then just the whole emotion of everything, I think that was kind of draining. And I feel as though in the Final Four, I feel like, I think we were just in my opinion, I feel like we were a little drained and a little bit emotionally drained from the success that we had, and just not being our first time, and not being completely prepared and ready. We were prepared and ready, for the game plan, but I think it just, each step of the way, just took a little bit out of us. And it's kind of hard to explain, but it just seems as though, if we could have figured out a way to refresh, and just kind of regroup to get our minds back on track. We were like rock stars, and everyone was so excited, and there's so many distractions, and it was difficult for it being our first time, and trying to maneuver, navigate, and just trying to make sure we were still focused.
Yeah, the atmosphere, even around the Schottenstein Center when you departed for the airport, things like that. I will say, to your point, UConn was on the come before that. They'd kind of been on the doorstep multiple times, so they were quote unquote used to the tournament atmosphere, used to winning. And to that point, the locker room after the game was very somber. You guys weren't happy, obviously. You just lost, but I still remember being struck by the sense of accomplishment that many of you had. And for you and Nishan, though, you're seniors. So obviously I had to feel a little different. I know Michael Redd decided to come back for another year, and he wasn't really as probably broken up as a guy who, like yourself, who kind of laid it all on the line for the last time. Talk about that a little bit, like the idea of like, hey, my last game, but it was in the Final Four.
Yeah, I think it was it's always tough to transition and move on. At that moment, we felt as though we could have won. We felt as though we matched up really well with them. They were almost a mirror image of our team, and we just didn't have enough to get over the hump. Richard Hamilton played great. He hit big shots after big shot, and we were definitely happy with making it that far, going to the Final Four. We wish we could have gone, kept on going, because we felt like we had enough to win a national championship. For me personally, I felt as though we reached our dreams, and one of my goals and dreams was to just leave a legacy behind, and to have a winning season, and for us to go to the Final Four and to have had such a magical season. We would be in the history books forever, and I would be able to leave my legacy.
Well, I've already kept you longer than I said, so I'm going to hit two things as quickly as I can here. We have to address the fact that a few years later, certainly things crashed down a little bit, and now there's no banner. Now, the problem is those of us who, especially who were there in person, right? I mean, when you go to the Final Four, they give the media a pin, and it has like the logo from the Final Four. I still have that. I still have the credential. I still have the memories. What has it done to you, or how did it affect you to know that banner's not there and that kind of thing?
It doesn't really affect me very much, not having a banner there. Um, we have, we've talked, you know, this whole time about all the memories and everything that happened. You can't erase that, and you can't erase the wins, and you can't erase the memories, the laughs. Uh, all those things happened, and whether you have a banner up, it really is. And the banner, I mean, not many people are going to see the banner, whether it's up or it's gone, but people are going to remember because of just legacy, and you telling stories about your experience with Sarah. That will never go away.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
my memories with those guys, on the court, in the locker room, will always be in my mind, in my heart, forever. We all have our rings, and we all have video, and it's something that has shaped us and will be with us forever.
Absolutely. All right. After college, you played overseas a little bit. You came back and got a master's degree from Central Michigan, so you continued that educational track. But as we talked about earlier, you came back to Columbus. I know you worked for Ohio State for a long time, and you're currently the athletic director at Columbus Academy. And you've got a big game. As we record this on Saturday night, your son is trying to win a state championship for Academy. I guess if you could just take me through kind of post playing career and things like that, and build up to your son being in the position he's in.
Yeah, I have been very fortunate to still be involved in sports. I worked at the NCAA, and worked there for a while, and I left there, got a job at Ohio State working in admissions. I'm sorry, in um, I was in compliance. Then I went to development and fundraising. Then I was an administrator, and I was over the men's and women's basketball team at Ohio State. Decided to leave Ohio State, and I decided to go to Columbus Academy, and I have been at Columbus Academy for 6 years as the athletic director. My kids also go there. My son is a junior. My daughter is a sophomore, and my son has been playing basketball this year. He has had a breakout season. It's been a magical season for him. They are 28-0 right now, and this Saturday they will play in the state championship. So I'm hoping that they can get one more win, and he can get a state championship. I when I was in high school, we went 28-0 and won the state championship. So he's kind of you know doing the same thing, and hopefully he can surpass me by being 29-0 Saturday.
Can you compare for me, the difference between doing it as a player and then watching your own son do it? Like, it's got to be, yeah, I'm at a much different level. Obviously, I didn't play college or pro athletics, but seeing my sons accomplish certain things on the field or court or what may be, it is different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's different, and you know I feel like I have the blueprint, and I can really share a lot with him. But kids, they usually don't listen to their parents. So I am just fortunate that we have a great basketball coach, Jeff Washler, and he does a great job of teaching. They watch a lot of film. He stressed defense and working hard and toughness. And my son, he's definitely excelled and improved as a young man and as a player under Jeff Worsler.
Well, hey, as Clark Kellogg said years ago, the madness of March is upon us. As we record this, the games are about to tip off, and you've got the madness of March there with the high school still going as well. Best of luck this weekend. And Jason, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with me. This is, for somebody like myself who was there with, alongside, I guess, or watching it from afar, many great memories. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And I am so proud to be a Buckeye, and I just feel truly blessed that I had the opportunity to play for Ohio State, and it's truly changed my life.
Well, hopefully, better times are ahead for Ohio State as well. But best of luck to you again this weekend, and hopefully Jason comes home with that undefeated state championship. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks. Thanks for tuning in, and check back later for more Buckeye Banter here on Buckeye Huddle.